Bridgemen aren't supposed to survive.
Kaladin's mind felt fuzzy. He knew that he hurt, but other than that, he floated, as if his head were detached from his body and bouncing off the walls and ceilings.
Kaladin, please. Please don't be hurt anymore.
Bridgemen aren't supposed to survive.
Why did those words bother him so much? He remembered what had happened, using the bridge as a shield, throwing the army off, dooming the assault.
Stormfather, I'm an idiot.
Kaladin?
He risked opening his eyes and looked out on an upside-down world, sky extending below him, familiar lumberyard in the air above him.
No, I'm upside down.
Hanging against the side of Bridge 4's barrack. The Soulcast building was 15 feet tall at its peak, with a shallowly slanted roof. Kaladin was tied by his ankles to a rope, which would, in turn, be affixed to a ring set into the slanted roof. He'd seen it happen to other bridgemen. One who had committed a murder in camp, another who had been caught stealing for the 5th time. His back was to the wall, so that he faced eastward. His arms were free, hanging down at his sides, and they almost touched the ground. As his father had trained him, he began to prod his side to check for broken ribs. He found several that were tender, at least cracked, probably broken. He felt at his shoulder, too, where he feared that his collarbone was broken. One of his eyes was swollen. Time would show if he'd sustained any serious internal damage. He rubbed his face, and flakes of dried blood cracked free and fluttered toward the ground. Gash on his head, bloodied nose, split lip. Syl landed on his chest, feet planted on his sternum, hands clasped before her.
Kaladin?
I'm alive. What happened?
You were beaten by those soldiers. I've gotten back at them. I made one of them trip 3 times today.
He found himself smiling. How long could a man hang like this, blood going to his head?
There was a lot of yelling. I think several men were demoted. The soldier, Lamaril, he was executed. High Prince Sadeas did it himself, the hour the army got back from the plateau. He said something about the ultimate responsibility falling on the Light Eyes. Lamaril kept screaming that you had promised to absolve him, and that Gaz should be punished instead.
He shouldn't have had me beaten senseless. Gaz?
They left him in his position. I don't know why.
Right of responsibility. In a disaster like this, the Light Eyes are supposed to take most of the blame. They like to make a show of obeying old precepts like that when it suits them. Why am I still alive?
Something about an example? Kaladin, I feel cold.
You can feel temperature?
Not usually. I can now. I don't understand it. I don't like it.
It'll be all right.
You shouldn't lie.
Sometimes it's all right to lie, Syl.
And this is one of those times?
Yes.
I think I understand.
So, I'm to be judged by the High Storm. They'll let the storm kill me.
Hanging here, Kaladin would be exposed directly to the winds and everything they would throw at him. If you were prudent and took appropriate action, it was possible to survive outside in a high storm, though it was a miserable experience. Kaladin had done it on several occasions, hunkered down, taking shelter in the lee of a rock formation, but hanging on a wall, facing directly stormward, he'd be cut to ribbons and crushed by stones.
I'll be right back.
Syl dropped off his chest, taking the form of a falling stone, then changing into wind-blown leaves near the ground and fluttering away, curving to the right. The lumberyard was empty. Kaladin could smell the crisp, chill air, the land bracing for a high storm. The lull, it was called, when the wind fell still, the air cold, the pressure dropping, the humidity rising right before a storm. A few seconds later, Rock poked his head around the wall, Syl on his shoulder. He crept up to Kaladin, a nervous Teft following. They were joined by Moash. Despite the latter's protests that he didn't trust Kaladin, he looked almost as concerned as the other two.
Lordling, you awake?
I'm conscious. Everyone get back from the battle all right?
All of our men, sure enough. But we lost the battle. It was a disaster. Over 200 bridgemen dead. Those who survived were only enough to carry 11 bridges.
200 men. That's my fault. I protected my own at the cost of others. I was too hasty.
Bridgemen aren't supposed to survive.
There's something about that.
He wouldn't be able to ask Lamoureux. That man had gotten what he deserved, though. If Kaladin had the ability to choose, such would be the end of all Light Eyes, the king included.
We wanted to say something. It's from all of the men. Most wouldn't come out. High storm coming and...
It's all right.
Well, is this. We will remember you. Bridge 4, we won't go back to how we were. Maybe all of us will die, but we'll show the new ones. Fires at night, laughter, living. We'll make a tradition out of it. For you.
Rock and Teft knew about the knobweed. They could keep earning extra money to bake for things.
You did this for us. We'd have died on that field. Perhaps as many as died in the other bridge crews. This way, we're only gonna lose one.
I say it isn't right what they're doing. We talked about cutting you down.
No. That would only earn you a similar punishment.
The three men shared glances. It seemed they'd come to the same conclusion.
What did Sadia say about me?
That he understood how a bridgeman would want to save his life, even at others' expense. He called you a selfish coward, but acted like that was all that could be expected.
He says he's letting the Stormfather judge you. Yazerizay, King of Heralds. He says that if you deserve to live,
I want you three to do something for me.
Anything, Kaladin.
I want you to go back into the barrack and tell the men to come out after the storm. Tell them to look up at me tied here. Tell them I'll open my eyes and look back at them, and they'll know that I survived.
Yes, of course, Kaladin. We'll do it.
Tell them that it won't end here. Tell them I chose not to take my own life, and so there's no way in damnation I'm going to give it up to Sadeas.
By the Uli Takanaki, Kaladin, I almost believe you'll do it.
Here.
Teft handed him something.
For luck.
Kaladin took the object in a weak, blood-stained hand. It was a sphere, a full sky mark. It was done, the stormlight gone from it. Carry a sphere with you in the storm, the old saying said, and at least you'll have light by which to see.
It's all we were able to save from your pouch. Gaz and Lamoureux got the rest. I complained, but what were we to do?
Thank you.
Moash and Rock retreated to the safety of the barrack, Syl leaving Rock's shoulder to stay with Kaladin. Teft lingered too, as if thinking to spend the storm with Kaladin. He eventually shook his head and joined the others.
Stormfather, what did you think? You know you're nothing but a blasted coward.
The door to the barrack shut. Kaladin fingered the smooth glass sphere. The sky was darkening, and not just because the sun was setting. Blackness gathered. The high storm. Syl walked up the side of the wall, then sat down on it, looking at him, tiny face somber.
You told them you'd survive. What happens if you don't?
My mother would cringe if she knew how quickly the other soldiers helped me to gamble. First night in Amaram's army, and they had me playing for spheres.
Kaladin?
Sorry. What you said, it reminded me of that night. There's a term in gambling, you see. In for all, they say. It's when you put all your money on one bet.
I don't understand.
I'm putting it all on the long bet. If I die, then they'll come out, shake their heads, and tell themselves they knew it would happen. But if I live, they'll remember it, and it will give them hope. They might see it as a miracle.
Do you want to be a miracle?
No, but for them, I will be.
It was a desperate, foolish hope. The eastern horizon, inverted in his sight, was growing darker. From this perspective, the storm was like the shadow of some enormous beast lumbering across the ground. He felt the disturbing fuzziness of a person who had been hit too hard on the head.
Concussion.
That was what it was called. He was having trouble thinking, but he didn't want to fall unconscious. He wanted to stare at the high storm straight on, though it terrified him. He felt the same panic he felt looking down into the black chasm back when he'd nearly killed himself. It was the fear of what he could not see, what he could not know. The storm wall approached the visible curtain of rain and wind at the advent of a high storm. It was a massive wave of water, dirt, and rocks, hundreds of feet high, thousands upon thousands of wind sprints zipping before it. In battle, he'd been able to fight his way to safety with the skill of his spear. When he'd stepped to the edge of the chasm, there had been a line of retreat. This time, there was nothing. No way to fight or avoid that black beast, that shadow spanning the entirety of the horizon, plunging the world into an early night. The eastern edge of the crater that made the war camp had been worn away, and Bridge 4's barrack was first in its row. There was nothing between him and the plains, nothing between him and the storm. Staring at that raging, blustering, churning wave of wind-pushed water and debris, Kaladin felt as if he were watching the end of the world descend upon him. The storm wall crossed the lumberyard in a flash and slammed into him.